Hey all, Helious here. A little bit of a different video today. I'm experimenting with a new format that would allow me to upload more frequently in between my larger but far more infrequent uploads. So let me know if y'all would like to see more of this type of video. I wanted to do a project file breakdown of my latest release, Aristeia, on Suba or Siberia, courtesy of Nordisan, who reached out and asked me to make this, so shout out. Without wasting any more time, let's just get started. Alrighty. So a couple things here. First things first, this little buffer in the intro. We just have like this reverse piano thingy that plays that leads directly into the start. And we also got this glockenspiel playing this little note run. And then we get directly into our intro, starting with like this little orchestral pattern. The layers here, first up, we have the piano with like the main melody. And the way I wrote this is I initially just started with the bass line. And then next up afterwards, I started doodling various melodic ideas with like a top lead. And then once I had the full melody, I then filled in like this little arpeggiating pattern. And then on top of this, we also have this glockenspiel following the melody. And I actually did some slight processing. So the piano itself is just Spitfire Labs piano. And then we also have this glockenspiel, BBC Orchestra. I use that a lot in the song because it's free. You should download this plugin if you don't have it, by the way. It's free, and it's a great resource considering that you don't have to pay for it. But the glockenspiel is heavily processed, so if I were to quickly demonstrate this, no processing, versus once it is processed, I'm basically just throwing some stuff on it to give it a sharper transient. So I do have just a straight up transient shaper on it. I have this thing here on like half mix, which is kind of funny considering there's like a dry and wet knob inside of it already. All this is doing is adding some additional white noise and like breathing air into the sound to make it feel less sterile. Throwing an OTT on there just because I liked how it brought out certain characteristics of the sound, like if I play it with and without. And then lastly, we also have this delay and EQ cutting out like the low end that was like randomly in there. Oh yeah, we also have strings right here that just play this little riff. For this pad, it's actually the exact same method I covered in my last video, in the Complextro video, and during the pad section. But just to quickly summarize, in a separate project file, what I'm doing here for this pad is I have a chord stack that's being low-passed, and I'm modulating the EQ a little bit. I'm washing it out with crazy amounts of reverb. And then on top of that, we have a toy piano, also in Spitfire Labs, playing the melody, as well as the piano, that are also like washed out with reverb and delay. And that's how we got this pad. And then we're also just layering some various effects to like impact and crash and downlift all this stuff. And then here's where it develops a little bit. This little pad thing right here, this tonal sort of effect. It's actually just two notes of a string that I pulse stretched, and then I'm just playing with the formant. So if I were to play it without the formant, you would hear it's just like a pulse stretched set of strings, but when you formant shift it, it gets this really interesting character, almost kind of like a vocal pad. And so that's kind of what that's doing here. In addition to that, we also have this random other pad I found, little texture thing. Some acoustic plucks, like an ambience pad in the background. And then as for like the orchestral bits, we add 3 new layers, and all that's happening here, pretty much, is... Wait, let me double check. Yeah, okay. Here we're just introducing the bass string, as well as a counter melody with these strings. We have like a cello lead. Is that how you pronounce that, by the way, cello? We got this cello string here. We have 2 sets of spiccatos. We got this one and this one. And then all together we get this counter melody to the piano. And then same glockenspiel as before. But yeah, so we're just developing the orchestral section here, introducing some more elements to give it a sense of like development and progression. And then once again, just continuing the theme of introducing like more orchestral elements, filling out the sound. One way to think about this, by the way I personally think about it, is if you're having a hard time making the development of like different orchestral sounds or just sound selection in general, you can always start by trying to make like a full orchestral sound and add all the elements like as if it would be the final thing, and then you can create variations of the same pattern where you're subtracting and removing things, and then you can work backwards from there. And so that's kind of what I did here in order to get the sense of development that we have going on here. But yeah, so just the same thing from before, developed section, but we are now introducing this little bass trumpet thing that just follows the bass string. I don't even think it's really noticeable in the song. It's more like a psychoacoustics thing, but... Oh, no, you can definitely kind of hear it. Yeah, it introduces some, like, more of, like, the... It's like those brass trumpet harmonics coming through on top of the bass string. And then we got this trombone thing. Or here's the trumpet. And then we also got this trombone. Modulating the dynamics here. And then we also have this set of horns here, which is the main thing that actually comes in. This is the key characteristic type of brass that I leaned into here. Also automating the dynamics. And yeah, so that's our intro here. Oh, no. There's some additional stuff here as well. In the second half of this phrase, in order to transition into like the tension building part of the song, we are adding these strings as well that come in at the second half of the phrase to sort of mesh in between the second half of the first phrase and the first half of the second phrase. A little in between glue, and then it persists. It persists as well through the rest of this section. That's what that sounds like. Without all the other layers in isolation, it's just this. All right, and that's our intro section out of the way. So next up, I want to take a look at the tension and buildup areas here. So I'll just quickly play this first. Fun stuff. Okay. An important concept that I do want to stop and take a look at here for a second is how to effectively build and establish tension. And one of my favorite ways to do this are these like layer swaps, for lack of a better term. And what I mean by that is if we go and observe before, when it's like we first started with just like piano and glockenspiel, then we introduced like the counter melody strings and then the brass. If you look at the sequence of order, it goes piano and glockenspiel, then strings, and then brass. Okay, so if you were to cut out the one, then all you are left with is the stuff that you built from the one. You're just left with the new stuff, but the previous foundation is gone. And I don't know about you, but personally, I feel like that introduces like this fun sense of tension. And from there, you can continue to build off of it. And another thing about tension is subtle foreshadowing. Here I'm also introducing the leads from the drop, but I'm low passing them throughout the like this build-up section. So if we just like take a look at that, we have and it just fades in, but it's just like hinting at certain elements of the drop on top of doing like the layer swap thing. and then constructing more elements that are in theme with tension. But first, just to take a look at the leads. I have this lead patch here. This is a lead I use in almost all of my songs. Perhaps maybe a bad habit, I don't know, but I just love how it sounds. It's kind of a monstrosity to look at though if you if you take a look. Conceptually, it's similar to a chord stack, but instead it's just a bunch of individual lead sounds and they're like all panned separately. At which point it gets compressed and limited into just like one big ol' lead sausage. And the reason I have two here is because the preset itself is monophonic, so I can only play like one note at a time for the slide notes. But I wanted to do a counter melody. So if we just looked at the melody here, just play it really quick. And then if we have that bottom lead as well. But if you play both, it just sounds so full. That's so sick. And quick little tip for writing counter melodies is if you just take the bass melody, like the initial one that we had, you can just grab another lead and just alternate between like fourth and fifth intervals. And by that, I mean, if you look in between each of the notes here in this piano roll, you'll see gaps of like 3 or gaps of 2. So if you were to count, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or just 1, 2, 3, 4. You could probably do this with scales, but I never use scales. I pretty much just go by ear and which decision sounds better. But yeah, that's just like a quick way if you want to do counter melodies. It doesn't have to just be the fourth and fifth intervals. You can do funny, silly, random stuff. But it's just something to be mindful of that you can do. And then on top of this, we have this super saw layer. It's just two oscillators. And then they're super detuned and wide. And then one of them is an octave higher. And then we also have this Camellia preset. I'm pretty sure I just nabbed this from like one of Roar's project files. Which, by the way, this entire track is incredibly inspired by Roar and Normal M. There's also some resources that I used in this song from Roar that I'll also link in the description below because I think they're super helpful and really cool. But yeah, that's where this came from. This is actually from, I mean, this preset in particular is from like a faceplant bank that Camellia made. It's like the microwave something. It's just adding texture to it. So if I were to play the leads like this, it just fills out the texture and sound, makes it sound more full. And that's the leads. Then as for the percussion, fully leaning into that theme of tension, we have this like string percussion loop that I really like. It's very intense. Very intense. No. And then we also have this ticking clock sample, which is just like very on the nose. And then we also have this hat loop. Just to have some like fluttering stuff happening in like the stereo fields and like a percussion sense. And then below, still just the same pads, but introducing even more effects to fill out all the pockets of the spectrum, as well as like really cement that sense of development of like, oh, okay, we're going somewhere with this. And then yeah, this is how that all sounds. And then next up here, is the actual build-up itself. And so we were already talking about the leads. Does anything change here? Yeah, okay, so in the second part, where it's like the actual build-up section, we are continuing the previous pattern that we did before with like the layer swap, except we reintroduced the piano. However, instead of playing the piano pattern that was at the start, we are instead following the counter melody that the strings had and doing that with the piano. In addition, we also have this almost inaudible I have to boost that in the edit probably. It's almost inedible. You can't eat this. No. It's inaudible, sorry. This inaudible harpsichord sound. Very subtle, just psychoacoustics type of stuff. I wanted to have this like bubbling, fluttery type of element. And this is the best way that I thought I could achieve that without being too overbearing or distracting. Just because like the activity levels, if you were to listen to this, it's like compared to like, I guess it kind of matches just because the drums, but in terms of like the instrumentation, it's just so busy. Like if I were to turn that up, you can kind of hear it, but when it's tucked away in the back, you can barely hear it unless you're really trying to intentionally focus on it. And I think it's just a really cool way to achieve like that subconscious sense of like bubbling over that I wanted to capture in the build-up. We also introduce the choir, which, by the way, is the most important part to this entire song. Throughout the rest of the song, the choir is going to be there. This is like the... What is it called again? Like Audio Imperius? Hold on, I have to look this up. Audio Imperia. Okay, we have the Audio Imperia choir light version because the full version is like $500. The light version is $100, by the way. It's quite expensive. But, I mean, it's good. I really like it. If you can muster up the cash to afford it, then by all means, like, you know, get some good choir sounds. But yeah, so we introduced this choir thing here. I consolidated it in order to compensate for the attack that's just like baked into the sounds. I'm not sure if that's adjustable if you have the full version, but I don't got $500, man. I do not have that type of money. I wish, I really do. But this is how that sounds. Just doing some slight reverb and then compression afterwards. I know, crazy, but I wanted it to have like a trailing choir pad on top of the actual like the actual hits of the choir thing. I wanted it to be persistent, so that's why I'm doing reverb then compression instead of the other way around. And then as for the drums, we got some silly stuff going on here. So we still have the previous layers, but we introduce this orchestral loop. And then the kicks, you know. Then we have this breakcore loop, which is another really cool sample that I found in the Synthetic Discord server, I think like 3 or 4 years ago. It's been quite a while. You'll have to dig and look for this. I haven't renamed it, though. You might be able to search by file name if you really want to look for this sample. But I finally found a use case for this. I saved it forever ago because I thought it was so cool. And what I'm doing here, actually, is, if I can find it in the mixer, goodness. That's right. Okay. I'm modulating the low pass, or I guess rather, modulating the low pass, and then it's opening up, and then we're also modulating the delay. So it goes from like this abstract sense of like a very blurry scene that gradually like hones in and focuses at like a singular point. I'll try to capture that in the build-up. And then we also got the snare loop here. And then in addition to that, we've also got this little clap loop here. And then altogether, that's how this all sounds. Oh, an important thing to note here, I also have this crash sample that's layered with the build-up kicks. That's very important. Can I observe this, please? There we go. This sample right here. Very traditional rhythm game type of build-up. But yeah, and then right here, just before the drop, we've also got this reverse piano bit, where if I were to play it normally, just, but if we reverse it, and then it goes directly into the drop. And speaking of which, let us look at that section now. Alrighty, arrangement-wise, this is a very standard, like, happy hardcore kind of arrangement. where, I mean, you got the chord stack and the bass, the ARP and the acid, and you got leads. Like all the key players are here. All the key players are here. An important thing that I do want to start with is with these drums. Very important piece to this is this like frequency filler thing. This is another thing that I nabbed from one of the Roar project files here. I actually use something similar pretty often. Like if I go to my favorites tab here, this sample right here I normally use, except in this use case, because the mix was already so bright and occupying a lot of those like high frequency ranges, it didn't sound as good, and I wanted something that had like more mid tonality. Granted, that was already kind of solved for me. I didn't have to look very far because it was already in like one of Roar's project files, so I was digging through and taking a look at. Has like more mid presence. I don't know how to explain it, but like even though it's all in like the high frequency range, it has more of like the mid tonality that I'm looking for, if that makes any sense. If you wanted to create something like this for yourself, you could take any sort of clap or any clap adjacent type of samples and just pulse stretch it like crazy. And then if you take the result and then just compress it and then sidechain it or whatever to like envelope shape it like how you see it here, you can get some very effective frequency fillers over your drums, and it's like a cool trick that you can do. But yeah, this part right here, very important to the drums, very important. And then here is just the ARPs that we were looking at earlier. All we're adding here is this pulse wave lead. We've also got like some pitch bend stuff, the mod wheel automating it for the little wobbles and squiggles that are fun to add. It adds character to your leads and breathes additional life into it if you're ever looking for more ways to do that. We got this acid plus ARP thing. I just got these. I'm borrowing these presets from the Roar project file that I have linked below. Again, absolutely check those out. Those are fantastic resources, of which I also used a lot of in this song. If you don't have phase plant, but you want to use like an acid kind of sound like that, if you just take like a sine wave, like let's say you're in Serum, modulate the sync of like a sine wave, and then also use the same envelope to modulate the resonance filter, and then do a bunch of additional processing like compression, EQ, delay, whatever you want, you can achieve effectively just the same sound. Distortion too. And then next up we have this chord stack, the AU5 chord stack, but it's tucked away in the back of the mix because I want the main. I have these backwards. It's the other way around. These are labeled wrong. This is just another super saw. Same thing with like the lead, where if you just have two oscillators, saw waves, and then unison detune, have one of the oscillators an octave higher, and then I'm just processing it with like some OTT, and then saturating, clipping it. And then for the sidechain, I'm just slapping the craziest looking LFO tool on here, carving a lot of room. Oh, speaking of which, I'm not sidechaining the leads. I let those sit on top of the mix. If you listen. That's another important concept. Stuff that exists within the higher frequency range, and if it's like one of the primary elements, as is this case for the lead is like the main focus I wanted in the drop. You can experiment with choosing to not sidechain specific elements, because I felt like it sounded better when the leads could breathe regardless of what the drums were doing. And then in addition to that, we also have the strings here, just very standard. I'm using Sign Player with the Berlin Free Orchestra, I believe it is. I'm just adding different string layers where it's like just stuff that exists within like lower tonality and then like the middle tonality and then like the higher tonality. That's how I mentally consolidate it. I'm not sure if that's actually true, but I'm just combining those three things to get just like one dense and narrow sounding string chord. Also just clipping it, saturating it like crazy. That's so funny. And then I'm also just cutting out any of the stereo frequencies below a certain range, just because we already have so much like stereo content in the lower mids that it was like starting to get a little muddy. So, and then just a choir pad. Audio Imperious, Women's Choir preset. Oh, in addition, so we have a ton of effects. One thing I do here is, at first, it's not sidechained, but then I modulated the mix level for the effects bus such that it eventually becomes sidechained. And it gives it like I don't know, it just makes it a little bit more dynamic because I didn't want it to have completely one way or completely the other. I wanted it to just blend, and I thought the result sounded nice. But yeah, that's how we got that. And then moving on to the second part of the drop, we got this section. Yeah, okay. So, it being the second part of the drop, transitioning into the bridge, I wanted to take the foot off the gas a little bit, so it wasn't as intense as, the first part of the drop. Just managing the energy levels. And so, the first thing was, because the leads are so active and busy, and it's like the key focus of the drop, I wanted to fade those out, but still give it like the room of like, something happens to the leads. Something has to happen to the leads before they disappear, but I do want them to disappear. So I have the leads just get washed out by reverb, and then balance automation goes down, and then also I'm modulating like the mod wheel of like all the different leads to give it like the squiggles. I don't know what to call it. It's like the pitch bend that goes fast with an LFO. You got the squiggles in there. So the leads fade out. We also reintroduce the strings from the intro, except I like cut and process them such that I could have more control of like over the attack and make it blend in a little better into the drop. Yeah, I'm modulating this peak controller with like the EQ. Because a transient shaper wasn't cutting it, because it was like very explicitly just a transient. I wanted the whole envelope to have like a more clinical adjustment, and so that's kind of what's going on here. It's also like very high passed. Got some reverb and some delay. More reverb. Okay, this is the reason why I have two instances of reverb. I promise I'm not crazy. The first one is just to make it sound like it exists within a very specific acoustic space. Like if I were to turn this off or like mess with it, you'll hear. It gives it a certain like acoustic characteristic, like it's being played somewhere, as per these parameters within the reverb. And then this is just for actual, like just washing it out kind of reverb. And then we're doing some saturating. This just looks come on. Listen, I felt like, given what I knew, that this was the most effective sequence of decisions I could make to get it to sound like how I wanted to. But it still looks very silly. But my thought process is, if this is the strongest decision that I can make, then by all means go for it. And then we've also got this delay here on the strings. And then we also bring back the glockenspiel here, so we got those strings from before. Same choir from before, we'll just keep it going. But then we also brought back the brass elements. Definitely a lot more saturated though, because the goal, I didn't want it to be like a smooth, silky warm. I wanted it to be like a harsh, crispy kind of warm. It was very arbitrary definitions I'm trying to attribute to sound here, but that's just my thought process going into this, and I'm not sure how I can better articulate those thoughts. But yeah, I'm just saturating it like crazy. But also cutting out the very high end because I still wanted it to just be like a mid-frequency range kind of thing. And then yeah, just being sidechained here. But yeah, and then that's like this section right here. Now, one thing is that if I didn't have, like, okay, so we got rid of the leads. That was the goal. I wanted to take the foot off the gas, manage the energy levels, and be able to, like, go into, like, a smoother landing rather than very high contrast, high activity level to just very like sleeper. I feel like that'd be too jarring. Trying to ease it off. But here's the thing: if I just played this section, and then it's like this part here, and then just have it loop again with no lead, like, yes, that would sound fine, but I don't know, it just felt a little boring, and I was like, there's space to work here. There's space that I can still do stuff in, and achieve the same effect of what the leads do to keep it entertaining and fun without absolutely destroying the energy levels. And so my solution to that was doing like this bit crush lead. And the way I fade it in here, actually, because I'm using a 3x oscillator. If I can find, where is this? Literally just a default sine. All I'm doing is adding this effector. If you go to lo-fi setting, effector, you just bit crush it. And then I'm just throwing like reverb, delay, EQ, etc. to make it not so dry. And then fun trick here. 2 fun tricks, actually. 2 for the price of 1. We have these bend notes, and it's how do you have 2 bend notes at once? You can separate them by the colors, and then the slide notes will act independently. Cool. Second thing, how do you get to fade in? It's another cool thing. The bend notes here, if you might not see it, it's actually down here. Woo, yeah, it's all the way down here. If you go from 0 velocity to like normal, that's how you get like a fade in type of thing without having to automate it. It's kind of pointless because you could just automate it, and this only works with like stock plugins. But if you're lazy and you don't want to automate it because automation feels clunky, this works. This works. So that's how I did that. And then it just goes into same lead from before, like lead pattern, but just playing this part. And then it also fades up at the end. But we'll get to that shortly. But all in all, that's how it sounds. And then right here, we have the cinematic hit. Ooh, it's signifying that we're going to a different section. At the very end, yep, that section is over. It's gone. And if that wasn't evident enough, we also have the bit crush getting automated to be even more extreme. It's like, if we want to extrapolate it and like be cheesy about it, it's kind of literally just like a game over screen at the end. I don't know. But then we also have reverse thing from the intro before going into the section, and then we have this little transition hit, which is just like low piano, just like low octaves, and then church bell. And am I doing anything to that? No, just delay and the craziest looking wave shaper. I do this a lot. This is actually, if you snoop around in enough of my project files, you'll see I just love just cranking the wave shaper like absolutely crazy. Perhaps maybe a little bit of over-reliance, perhaps. But I liked how it sounded compared to if we had not done that. So I just went with it anyways. Oh, we also got this little sub-drop thing. But yeah, that's this little outro section. And then next up, to the bridge. Hooray! Okay, we're gonna take a look at the bridge, but before I explain anything, I'll just play it really quick. Okay, so let's take a look at what's going on here. Still the same pad stuff. Using a lot of effects is very important. Use more effects. In addition to that, we've also got all these pad things. Same pad design from before, just a different pattern. And then we introduce these 3 new things. So we have, or I guess this isn't new. We're also using this in the intro. But we got some clothes flapping, some wind, so cinematic. And then also this like vocal pad. And that's how all the pads sound. Oops, let me select these. There we go. Already, a crazy atmosphere, very fun. And okay, so with this orchestral section here, all we're really doing is utilizing all the elements, all the orchestral elements that we've already introduced throughout the song, except we're just doing like some new melodic sequences and new patterns. So I'm introducing some more melodic ideas and like counter melodies and whatnot. There's like this big old progression thing here with all the brass and the strings and the piano, as well as the glockenspiel, very important. So we have and we got the bass string, as well as the trumpets. But otherwise, it's all the elements that we've introduced. But just exploring untreaded territory, at least conceptually. It's like the story of the song, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, with this orchestral section, all we're really doing is taking layers that we've already introduced throughout the song, except we're exploring new melodic ideas. Oh, we also got this like vocal pad thing here as well to transition. And then we got the hats here, as well as this like very dissonant like trumpet plus bass string thing here for like the lower end, which then resolves at the build-up. But it's like a fake resolution because you're now going into this more tense bit. But this actually directly leads us into our next section. So let's take a look at it. Fun stuff. Now this build-up is actually not too dissimilar from the first one. It's largely all the same moving parts. The key difference here is in the way that I'm trying to achieve contrast from between the build-up and the drop. And what I mean by that is before, in the initial build-up, I had like all these strong like bass elements and stuff that was like harmonically rich in the low end playing throughout the build-up. Whereas here, most of our bass content was coming from like the bass string and the brass, like if we listen to this. Which fades out. It just goes away. And then what do you have afterwards? It's not the guitar, because the guitar does not contain any meaningful low end that would normally be addressed by like a sub bass or something comparable. And that is intentional. It's all the same build-up layers from before, but we have this guitar here. And the reason I'm choosing to neglect the sub bass in the second half of the build-up is because I could still make it sound relatively full without all the low end. And then by jumping from no low end to drop that's very intense and also has a lot more, especially relative, a lot more low end, it just hits that much harder. And so that was my goal here. We got the section. The only low end content is the stuff that's like that just naturally occurs in like the composition. Then here for the guitars, I consolidated this because the processing for these guitars takes up so many resources. But if I were to enable these, actually here, let me disable those first. So we're doing like sidetrack things where it's like left and right guitar. It's just some flex presets. And then for the processing, both pretty much the same change, just panned left and right, is amped Stevie T. I'm using the free version of it, which is really effective. I'm sure there might be better ways to go about like processing your guitars, but this is not an area I'm all that well versed in for like guitar processing and like getting some crazy gnarly tone. But yeah, I threw sound goodizer on it, man. I wanted it to sound good. Listen. No, I threw sound goodizer on it, and I just went with it, and I thought, you know what, I like it. So I just rocked with it, and then we have this beautiful looking EQ curve. It's got the feng shui. Look at the shape of that. And then same thing here, I believe. Nope. Never mind. Different EQ. We have a different EQ here. I mean, it's still cutting out some of the like muddier low frequencies, but I guess I'm just boosting the high end here. Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't toggle these while I was walking through it. Let me demonstrate the difference that this makes. Immediately just gives it some like super gnarly guitar tone, and then sound good as again, just using like a normal multi-band compressor would probably not even probably, it just would be better. It just would be better. But yeah, and this is how that sounds. But yeah, and then I just consolidated it because Stevie T uses up a lot of CPU resources. It's very computationally dense, and that's pretty much our whole buildup. Oh yeah, but then right before it gets super intense, instead of going directly from 0 to 1 with like super contrast, I at least wanted to give some sort of way to break the ice, which is why I added these like crunchy kicks before the drop. We also have this EQ toggle thing, but that's going to be something that we look at here in the drop, which we can take a look at right now. Even with Smart Disable on, it's still chewing through all my system resources. Okay, so there's actually there's a lot going on here and a lot to tackle, so I'll just try and make my way starting from like top down, just because I feel like that might be easier for me to sequence my explanation. So we have first things first, starting with the drums. Very important thing happens here, because before, this is how our drums were, this is how they looked. So that's like the same drums that we used for the previous drop. But here's the thing. That's not the drums that we're using, because we have this hat layer on the kicks. And that makes the whole difference. No, I'm joking. It's just there for texture reasons. But most importantly, it's this thing right here. It's like a crunchy hardstyle kick, but without all the low end. Again, this is another thing that I got from the Roar project file. I went through a number of hardstyle kick packs, and I couldn't find what I was looking for. I tried to synthesize it myself. I couldn't get what I was looking for, but this, it's just beautiful. It's perfect. So I was just rocking with this. But yeah, so that's the drums, and that's how it's like super crunchy, is this thing right here. And then for the leads, same type of leads from the previous thing, but the patterns are different. This part introduces the piano as part of the lead, and it's doing this like, it transitions from those 16th notes to the 12th notes, playing triplets, which also introduces the piano, at which point it goes back to the 16th notes, and then at the very end, it's like the climax of the drop here. It goes like an octave higher. We have this like action guitar loop thing. It's like the clicky like guitar brushes or like guitar like transient strum things. Just for additional texture. It's almost inaudible within the mix. It's just another like psychoacoustics element. And then we have this sine rhythm thing. Same bit crush sine from before, but we're doing some velocity stuff to do like a call and response where it's like quiet, loud, quiet, loud. You know what I mean? That's just playing throughout it. And then same thing as before, we got the acid plus the ARP. And then same kind of bass here. It's just like the dispersed saw wave bass. But we're also adding this little texture bit, which also looks crazy. Sound good eyes are spotted. Whoa! This is just to add some additional crunch on top of like the disperser bass, because like a dispersed saw bass, it just sounds very clean, And that's to its benefit. It's very clean and it has a lot of character, but I wanted to introduce some extra crunch to the sound, which is why this thing is here. So if I were to like play the difference, effectively it's just a mid bass that's been incredibly like distorted, with like wave shaper and whatnot. Cutting out the low end here. And this EQ looks diabolical. Don't get me wrong. You might look at this and want to throw up. I do too, but it is intentional. Every decision here is oozing with intention. No, it's because if I get rid of it, it's like, dude, it doesn't even matter. I'm just now realizing this. This EQ doesn't matter. Whatever. I don't even. Okay. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And that's the beautiful part about music production. You can be incredibly pedantic and spend countless hours on random shenanigans. And at the end of the day, it's inconsequential. For the most part. But that's the beauty of it all. That's the beauty of the medium. That's the beauty of the art form. Is spending 4 hours just making a crazy looking EQ that doesn't do anything. And that's what it's all about. If there's one thing to take away from this video. Yes, that's the bass. Same chord stack as before. Just new chords. And then also like the same strings from before, but just playing the new pattern. Got the male choir this time. And then here, following the leads without all the additional activity, with the harpsichord, we have the fluttery one from before, glockenspiel, and then the main harpsy, which is just this like sound font. But yeah, I mean this harpsichord is just reverb and delay, EQ, and then we're just like clipping it. Similar string leads from the intro, like the counter melody leads. I was playing this part too. And then also the actual pattern itself. Funny story about this. This was not intentional. In FL Studio, a really awesome and cool bug is that if you do this, where like you do the double right click, and if you just want to like mute elements, if you, within this section, go to consolidate something else, like let's say I highlight this, and I want to consolidate this section, which I did for a lot of various sounds, as you can tell by all the various tracks titled Consolidated. It'll just undo the muted part. And I, halfway through working on this song, that just happened to like a bunch of the clips I had muted, unbeknownst to me. So I just went through working on it, and then the next day, I woke up the next day and I'm like, huh, this sounds different. And you know the phenomenon when you work on something, you go to bed, you wake up, you re-listen to it, and it's like the meme of like, oh, this sounds awful. It sounds terrible. Same thing happened to me. So I went through and I mixed. I was mixing while working on this, and then I mixed it relative to having both layered. I was like, okay, I didn't look too closely at the fact that these were not grayed out anymore. So I just went about mixing it. Little did I know, it's playing both. And then I couldn't undo, because like anytime, if I tried to just reduce it down to just one of them, it immediately sounded worse than it did the night before. And I was like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe this. That's so awesome. That's so awesome and cool. So I just, you know what? I was like, I don't care. I'm gonna rock with it because I already mixed it and it sounds fine. It just looks funny, but I'm not too concerned about how it looks as long as it's functional. But yeah, that's why this is the way it is. So these two are the same, except this one is sidechained, the other one isn't. It has like a fun stereo delay kind of effect to it. No, this is actually awesome and cool. And then you also get the interesting dynamics between one is sidechained, one is not, and it kind of meshes. Never mind. This was a genius decision. And not an accident. No, I'm playing. It was entirely accidental. Happy accidents. Shout out Bob Ross. But yeah, so that's this drop, that's the section. And then here at the end, we go to the second part of the drop, which I'll quickly demonstrate now. Yeah, okay, so that's the second half. Structurally very similar to how I did the other drop in terms of taking your foot off the gas pedal, managing the energy levels, and then also doing the fade out thing with the leads. At which point I pivot the melody from the leads back to like the piano, playing the where is it? Is it? Here it is. Yeah, okay. So calling back to the intro with like the piano and the glockenspiel, go back to the melody of the intro, tease that back, and it's like a retrospective, like it serves the function of calling back to the intro with like the same intro elements, but it's like, oh, it's the drop, so it's like this fun, cool little callback thing. Yeah, so that's going on. We faded out the leads. We introduced this psytrance type of bass, and I'm automating like the tightness. And it's so subtle that no one would ever notice this in a million years just by listening to it. But it's just to give it like a slight sense of like it's very dynamic and it's like moving, living, breathing, instead of just being like a static side bass that's just like being sidechained. Not that there's anything even wrong with that. It's just that like extra 1% that I really enjoyed, and I figured I should keep it. Drop strings from before. Oh, we have those like harmonic brass elements here again, from earlier. Got the women's choir here. And then this like muffled out. There's so much stuff happening in the high end here that I consolidated this so I could muffle the high end a little bit. But it's the harpsichord and then the like counter melody strings from the intro, as well as like a church bell. And then same pads as before, except we also introduced these other, also just inaudible sort of like percussion glitches stuff. Now these are actually from what would have been the third drop. Fun fact about this song, trying to make the third drop, and I just bricked so many ideas. It took like 7 separate like drop compositions until I finally got one that I actually liked. And these were a remnant of one of those attempts. But yeah, these are from that. But I tried to turn them into like glitch type of Foley to add some additional texture. Bunch of effects and whatnot all playing here. And then we got these little cutout pauses before transitioning to the next section. And then we move on to the next section, the next bridge. Cool. Fun stuff. Okay. Yeah, okay, so this next bridge is incredibly similar to the one that we already looked at. Okay, yeah, so for this orchestral section, all the layers are literally the same. The only difference in the layering is I have this plugin, Magical 8-bit. It's just like this little 8-bit drone that plays in the background. But the key difference comes in the writing. It's kind of just like a derivative of the original melody to really cement and sell the idea that we're developing, we're moving, things are happening, but it's like the calm before the storm, we're leading to what will be the climax. And again, it's like so arbitrary, you can't measure that. It's just entirely vibes based. Okay, so this layer right here, it's following the melody of like the orchestral bit down here. And this little this reverse part of the leads that are about to come in. It's just stretched, reversed, and then you got this little envelope fading it in. And then just additional counter melodies with like more clicky transient stuff to stand above like the softer tame elements, as you'll hear here. All of these, by the way, fun fact, these are all stock presets in Serum 2 that I'm using. Like this here. And like this thing here. And this one here. And then for these leads, also all like stock well, okay, this one's not a stock preset. It's just like a pitch envelope on pulse wave lead, and then stock preset again. Stock preset. Stock preset. A slightly, I think they might be slightly modified. We get that counter lead stuff here going on. And then it resolves right there on the, which is like very powerful right here. Transitioning right into the build-up, which we can now take a look at. Very similar to the previous build-ups, but we're just adding some additional layers and introducing some more activity, just because this is the build-up right before the final climax of the whole song, and I wanted to communicate that. So we brought back the original melody, so we have the original leads. All the drums are the same for the most part, except another thing that we added that we'll take a look at in a second. But first, we've also got this acid thing, but this one is like a serum one. Also a stock preset, by the way. And the cutoff gets modulated, and then it's like it reverbs out. But we're also adding the plucky lead things from the bridge just before this. And then lastly, we have these little EQ bands. It's like, what are these for? It's for the kick. We're doing a low pass and a high pass thing. If I can find the EQ, I'm lost. There we go. It just built upon the idea of tension and gives it some more dynamic sort of expression, more movement. Also really good for the energy levels. All right, and then that's our build-up. Now moving on to the drop. It's so choppy. I don't know what to do, man. I don't know what to tell you. I'll maybe just edit the original song over it, just because it's so it is so choppy. My computer cannot handle this, and that's fine. Really core idea I want to talk about is like the fake out in between like the build up and then the actual impact of the drop. This part right here. First, I mean, we have like the leads like fade out and then back in. Which is like very fun. You got like a little like U shape, little scoop. Have some fun movement there. But most importantly is this part. What's happening here is I'm playing like the motif, but the different bass line is there to indicate that we're about to have like a bass line. Like the bass line changes in the second or the third drop, I mean. In this final drop, the bass line changes, and this is like sort of a way to hint and foreshadow very subtly that that's about to happen. But the second thing, like melodically, I really wanted to paints a scene that captures the desperate effort to prevail, and it's like it looks bleak, but then you kind of lock in the drop. It's very arbitrary, but this is very much what I had in mind when making this. Is I wanted it to be like, oh, we're like losing it, whatever it is. It can be extrapolated on anything that has like some sort of like dramatic, cinematic like boss fight kind of thing. But then the drop impact hits, and it's like, no, we gotta lock in, and it's like it's super clutch. And I thought it was super exciting. Personally, this is my favorite part of the whole song. Both like the writing aspect of it, but also just how it sounds. But maybe I'm just waffling too much about it. I don't know. And then this lead here, I mean, we got some automation stuff. Oh, oops, wait, and then it's also just like a fade out thing. I only added that pitch bend thing because there's something similar to it in like Camelia's Exit This Earth's Atomosphere fun song. And I was like, I want to do that too here, because I think that'd be fun. Oh yeah, I added a new chord stack because if I'm trying to one up the previous drop, I'm going to need to introduce additional elements that have more oomph, and then also find a way to like mix that in. So I have this chord stack here. Same one as this, but just more centered and focused rather than being like sent to the back in the mix. You can kind of hear. It's more forward. We got the choir, drop strings from before, and then same like string stabs. Incredibly important key detail about the third drop is the introduction of this additional bass. It's quite literally the same as this one, except EQ'd differently. I would just like to repeat the thing I said earlier about the EQs, about just making the craziest looking just abominations inside of parametric EQ2. It's a rite of passage, but they're important to the sound, and then it also gets like saturated a little bit in Wave Shaper. Very important thing here too, though, is I'm also dispersing it with all pass phase. Another free plugin that you should download if you don't already have it. It's great. It just does exactly what Disperser does, except it's free and not $50. But I'm layering this on top of the other basses. You can immediately hear the difference. It's like a hardcore bass, and it's like more harmonically dense, which cuts through. The reason the bass here is so important to like add another thing here that's like more harmonically dense is because it's able to cut through the additional elements that we are introducing or changing, whether it be like directly adding new stuff or if we're like mixing stuff slightly differently to be more impactful. This just lets the bass still cut through and be incredibly prominent and intense. Slightly different direction of the initial melody, just to communicate that this is like, time is a flat circle. We're back at square one, except it's like the ultimate climax. You got a bunch of stuff happening, but it's still like a desperate scene. But we're locked in and persisting. So instead of going up, we're going down. That's what's happening right here. And then it still does that. But the parts where it's going down, that's different. So yeah, that's the first part of our final drop. But then we have this section here afterwards, which I'll play now. I mean, and that's the rest of the song. That's the final bit. But in this last section, it's still so structurally similar It really is just like exactly the same, but just ramping and accelerating each separate drop. And that's part of the theme. I wanted the theme to be like a constant, like acceleration creep, if you will. But very specifically with this part, following the first part of the final drop, I wanted to capture, if the phrase right before this drop was capturing a scene of a desperate effort to prevail against like all odds, I wanted this part to be the triumph of overcoming an absolutely overwhelming adversary, beating all odds, and like the adrenaline rush of like, holy crap, we're flying. I don't know. That's kind of the impression I get from this and the feeling that I wanted to capture. I'm not sure it's particularly helpful, but if it's a product file breakdown, I would at least like to explain it because I want to nerd out about this stuff. I think about this stuff all the time. I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to take the opportunity to talk about my creative ideas because I wanted the strings to capture. I mean, you have like the adrenaline rush of like the triumph with like the bells coming through and like the lead going out. But I wanted to capture the surreal feeling of like, oh my goodness, I did it. Are you kidding me? I overcame all odds. That surreal feeling, like embedded within like the adrenaline rush. Just in general for the processing, most of my processing in the song can be reduced to some combination of like compression, saturation, clipping, and EQ. And then for any like creative like spatial decisions, that was like all delay and reverb. And then the master chain is literally just a clipper, and then I'm just like gain matching it so it's not coming in at like plus 2 billion decibels. And then I also just have this Ozone 9 elements on it just for some slight stereo widening, just to really make the mix as like full as it can be. And then additionally, even though it's already clipped, we also have a limiter that's also like boosting it a little bit, just to squeeze every ounce of reasonable loudness without destroying like the character of like the song's distortion. But yeah, thank you for watching. And I got a new video coming soon. I've been hard at work. I promise I've not been slacking. Speed Garage video coming soon. That one will be a much larger video, comparable to like the high-tech one or the Complextro one. But yeah, I hope you guys learned something new, or at the very least, just found it generally helpful or entertaining. With that being said, I hope y'all have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.